I've had a friend that I met here years ago named Philip Haney. He was one of the finest, most patriotic, competent people I've ever known in my life. A man of absolute honesty, complete integrity, who cared deeply about the future of this country. He also was a Christian brother, and that certainly affected so much of what he did. But Philip studied Arabic culture and language while he was working as a scientist in the Middle East before he became a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security in 2002. He was there at the beginning when Homeland Security became a department for the first time. He was a Customs and Border Protection agricultural officer. He was a scientist by education and training. Amazing how organized and how brilliant he was. I constantly marveled at his ability to organize facts in his own head and memorize and remember things so clearly. But after he advanced as a CBP officer, where he served several tours of duty at the National Targeting Center near Washington, D.C., he was quickly promoted to its advanced targeting team, which was an unprecedented accomplishment for an agent on temporary duty assignment. The FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force Award is something he was presented in recognition of his exceptional contributions to interagency national security successes. He won numerous awards and commendations from his superiors for meticulously compiling information and producing actionable reports that led to the identification of hundreds of terrorists. He specialized in Islamic theology and the strategy and tactics of the global Islamic movement. He wrote a book after he retired from government service, a takeoff on the Obama administration's slogans, "See something, say something." But as he experienced firsthand, he saw things that were a threat to this country. He said something, and he was severely punished for it because apparently the Obama administration had some radical Islamic ties that they did not want anybody, including Philip Haney, to expose. So he had a book he wrote, "See Something, Say Nothing," and it documented the Obama administration's effort to obfuscate the role that radical Islam played in numerous Muslim terrorist attacks that took place in America from 2008 to 2016. One review of Philip's book described it as an expose of a politically correct federal government that capitulates to a subversive enemy within and punishes those who reject its narrative. In 2016, as a whistleblower, he testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee, chaired by then-Senator Ted Cruz, to allege that the Obama administration had acted irresponsibly concerning Islamic extremism. Philip Haney claimed that the administration had acted in favor of political correctness rather than take actions that may well have prevented the June 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando and the San Bernardino shooting in December of 2015. He was investigating groups that helped radicalize normal Muslim believers, radicalizing them to the point that they would commit acts of terror. And he found some ties. And it was amazing when he got a hold of a string, how he could trace that string back to its roots. He once said that he did at the Department of Homeland Security what he did with bugs. He followed the trail and found the nest. It was amazing how he could do that, and that's the reason he was cited as he was. In fact, this letter from June 8th of 2012 to Officer Philip B. Haney, on behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, I commend your outstanding contributions while assigned to the National Targeting Center passenger. Your display of dedication and effort in the fight against terrorism has been exemplary. Your talents and professionalism have contributed to the continued achievements of the NTC-P. You played a key role by providing support to the CBP mission and the NTC lead role in defending and protecting our nation's borders. A key component of the National Targeting Center passenger, a success in is the invaluable people like you who perform the work in our important mission. I'm confident to know that CBP can rely upon you to provide expertise to combat threats against our nation. Additionally, your expertise and experience has been invaluable while assigned to the advanced training team. Your research on the Tablighi Jamaat initiative has assisted in the identification of over 300 persons with possible connections to terrorism. The assistance you have provided in the development of this initiative has been key to the future success of the project. National Targeting Center looks forward to your continuing support and assistance in the program. Once again, thank you for your unfailing commitment to the success of the National Targeting System mission. Your professional actions and achievements reflect favorably on you and all of the Customs and Border Protection. Thank you for a job well done. Well, that was June of 2012. Wasn't terribly long after that. He had been entering information on radical Islamic ties with people in the United States, attempting to come into the United States, with ties to people in the United States. He was documenting all those things. And we had a Secretary of Homeland Security who bragged about how Homeland Security could connect the dots. And then he was ordered to start removing these dots, so to speak. He was ordered to start deleting thousands of pages of data that he had carefully researched and identified that would help protect America. That was during the Obama administration. He was scared for his country that the Obama administration would make him delete. And there was an occasion when he was watching his computer and somebody started deleting hundreds of pages of documents as he watched. Hundreds of pages of information that would have helped keep America safe for the future. There was an opportunity the House of Representatives had. We were in the majority. He could have been brought in as a specially requested agent for the House. Apparently, there were people that were afraid that he had so much information, the Obama administration might come after anybody that was attempting to help or protect him and the valuable information he had. But he wasn't brought in. He was told, oh, go file an IG complaint with Homeland Security Inspector General. I implored him that that would be a mistake because the Inspector General at that time at Homeland Security had already been cited for falsifying an IG report to protect the Obama administration. We knew that it was not going to be a fair Inspector General investigation, and in fact, he became an official whistleblower. He became a whistleblower, filed his IG complaint about the Obama administration deleting so much data from its database to help identify terrorists. And clearly, for anybody that was involved in that effort to purge our computer data on foreign terrorists, his complaint could be seen as a threat to expose people within the Obama administration who were involved in purging, or as one of our intel people, Homeland Security, like DOJ, began to blind itself of the ability to see our enemies. That's why, even though he was investigating Tablighi Jamaat and the manner in which normal Muslim believers were converted into radicals that would be capable of murder, there were a number of things that he noticed that they did to move people in that direction. He identified that the people in San Bernardino who killed, I think it was 14 Americans there, that if he'd been allowed to pursue his investigation, would have identified those people. We'd blinded ourselves with the ability to see our enemy. So, and we also had not been training people. Philip had identified a female in California involved in the shooting. She took on the name of a famous radical Islamic male terrorist. If he had been allowed to question her, he would have immediately known there's something very wrong here. Why would you take on the name of a male terrorist, historic terrorist? But it had been made very clear in the Obama administration that if you are too active in pursuit of radical Islamists, then it's not going to go well for you. And in fact, after he filed the IG report, I think it was an effort for some in the Obama administration to protect themselves. We've now seen it occur with the Trump campaign. There was a grand jury that was convened to go after and try to destroy Philip Haney's life. His wife, Francesca, was a college professor, and the trauma of being raided, constantly harassed and questioned, seeing one of the finest, most honest and honorable protectors of America in our history, Philip Haney, she saw him just being savaged. And it ended up resulting in her going to the hospital. Whether it was a full-blown nervous breakdown or not, I'm not sure. But it sent her to the hospital to have the United States government go after a man she knew was a hero for and to the United States. Well, Philip was so meticulous, so organized. They couldn't find anything with which to indict him. They were trying to drag up something, but he had well documented everything he'd ever done. It's the way he was. It's who he was. They couldn't find anything to indict him. They had already moved him in basically a closet, kept him from doing the job he was the best at in protecting America. And finally, they basically said, well, we can't find anything. So look, if you'll just agree to retire, then we'll let everything go, but you got to destroy stuff in your possession. Well, he retired, and that's when he wrote the book, See Something, Say Nothing. He had been savaged by his own government, his own country that he was trying to protect. And I'd commented to him, in his book, he had given me a draft to read before it was published. I said, Philip, you don't really name a whole lot of names in this book about where the problems have been. He said, I know, this is just the first. I'll do another that names names. And that's what he was working on. After Francesca had died about a year ago, he moved to California and was near his sister, Diana. And I was so thrilled to get a text from Philip saying, basically, I've met someone, she's wonderful, and in talking, they were soulmates. And I texted him that I had a minister friend that had said, it's interesting, when men who've been in a long marriage have their wife pass away, it's not unusual. In fact, it may be average to have them remarried in 6 months. Of course, he volunteered. Of course, women that have been in a long-standing marriage, when their husband dies, a lot of them don't want to ever remarry. It's an interesting difference. But anyway, so I wasn't surprised that he had found love again. He and Denise were going to be married on April 4th. It appeared he would be coming back to work for the United States government and finally be able to put to full use his incredible knack for rooting out terrorists. I was amazed because when you met Philip, you weren't sure. He was kind of a quiet guy, and you didn't realize at first just how brilliant he was. And he could ask questions, and I know he did this with people trying to come into the country, and he got people to volunteer information. I bet they thought, oh, this guy, what a doofus, what does he know? He got them to volunteer information that I doubt I could have ever gotten out of them, no matter how tough a cross-examination I'd done. But Phil, in his amazing way, he could get information out of people. It was amazing what he was able to do and capable of doing. So he had hoped to be coming back in the next few weeks to work for the federal government. But then he got some news last week that he needed to have open heart surgery. Chances of success were very good. Complete success. Shouldn't be too long of a recuperation time. And he passed that along to the person that he was going to be coming to work for in the federal government. Sent him a text. Got to have open heart surgery next week, but basically hope to be available for work shortly after that. Short recuperation. He talked to his sister, either talked or texted with his sister virtually every day. And they texted up to the evening last Thursday, and Friday he was found in his car with a gunshot wound and a gun nearby. I think the Amador County law officials are doing a decent job. They seem to be very committed. But his book was going to name names of people that put this country at risk. Getting married April 4th. Finally going to be able to come back to the U.S. government and use his incredible talents and ability to spot danger for our country and stop it. And he ends up with a bullet in him. So the investigation is ongoing. He is severely missed by those of us who loved him. We had talked back before he filed the IG complaint. I'd been concerned about his safety with all the information he knew and the people that could have gotten in trouble. And we had a mutual pact. If it said either one of us end up having committed suicide, then the other is going to make sure that truth wins out. He is so organized, though. He had made clear to his sister that something he was going to do and something he was doing. He said, "You need to come over because I've got everything laid out. If something happened during the heart surgery next week, got everything laid out." And that's how he was. Everything was so organized. I would love to be as organized as Phil. And he had such a positive outlook on things. He had been through a horrendous time with his wife having been made ill by the raucous Obama administration coming after him to try to shut him up. And see, that's what a real whistleblower, he testified before the Senate. That's what a real whistleblower does. A real whistleblower does not remain anonymous. They come forward, subject themselves to cross-examination, and supposedly have protection. But that's not what happened in the Obama administration. If you were a whistleblower, in fact, the Obama administration prosecuted more people for leaking than every other administration in our country's history added together. They went after whistleblowers. Rather tragic. I can't adequately express it. February 5th, 2016, The Hill had an article about Phil. DHS ordered me to scrub records of Muslims with terror ties. Conservative head HQ, George Rassley, done a really nice in memoriam. Philip B. Haney, 21st Century. Paul Revere. Fox News had an article by Nick Givas. Philip Haney, DHS whistleblower during Obama era found dead, police say. Joe Martin, Philip Haney, whistleblower and happy warrior. What an amazing man. I miss him. I miss getting his cheery text messages. And I know his fiance and his sister and even his brother-in-law, his brother, miss getting those messages as well. So there's big news, supposedly, that the Trump administration is now trying to make sure that people that are working for the Trump administration are actually working for it and not against it. And the truth is, President Trump got some bad advice from people that were not concerned about his achieving the goals he promised he would work toward, but they were interested in stopping him. We found out after the George W. Bush administration, there were holdovers from the Clinton years that would tell President Bush, yes, sir, we'll take care of it, and then drug their feet and made sure what he wanted didn't happen, and even would leak information to try to stop President Bush from achieving what he hoped to achieve. And we have certainly seen that occur in the Trump administration. And in fact, an article mentions Rich Higgins. He had prepared information, basically a memo on how to move forward and how the Trump administration could protect itself from people that would try to stop President Trump, but to make sure that people working for him were actually working for him. But a buddy of Mr. Brennan, Mr. Clapper, named H.R. McMasters, found out about the memo, and instead of rewarding Rich Higgins for his brilliant work to help the Trump administration, he had him perp walked out and refused to let him even go back to his office, because Mr. McMasters, despite his front and his sucking up to President Trump, he was all about stopping President Trump. And for his time there, he may have helped on some little things, but overall, he was making sure, certainly appeared to me, he was making sure that President Trump didn't achieve the goals he hoped to. And in fact, was heard to badmouth, say vulgar things about President Trump. So it was good when he was gone, and President Trump has continued to work on efforts to get people that actually want to help him achieve his goals. And naturally, deep state establishment people in Washington, they don't want to see that happen. So they throw up things like, oh, gee, the Trump administration is on a witch hunt. It's not on a witch hunt. It just wants people that will work to help the president achieve his goals. So if, for example, you have an inane person working with the National Security Council, and in his mind, he knows everything that anybody needs to know about Ukraine, and he puts together talking points for the president to use in talking to the president of Ukraine, and the president doesn't follow his expert talking points, because the president is foreign policy when he gets elected, not what some lieutenant colonel thinks. But you can tell Vindman got he got a burr in his saddle, so to speak, when the president didn't follow his talking points to the T. He needed to go. It appears he likely leaked information to the so-called whistleblower, not a real whistleblower. A real whistleblower is a man of courage and integrity like Philip Haney. That's a real whistleblower. A real whistleblower is somebody like Adam Lovinger, who sees that the Department of Defense is paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, multiple payments, to some professor in London named Stephen Halper, who happens to be setting up the Trump campaign so that they can get warrants against it. And Department of Defense is paying this guy, but Adam's job is making sure Defense Department was getting their money's worth when they paid, and he couldn't see they were getting money, any money's worth from this Stephen Halper guy in London. So if the left really wants to see somebody prosecuted who was in the U.S. government, who was paying for foreign interference in our election, maybe they should start with the guys that came after Adam Lovinger, or a real whistleblower, not like this guy that filed a secret complaint that wasn't firsthand, had no personal knowledge. They just knew they wanted to stop President Trump and didn't mind putting the United States government at risk by doing so because, after all, they hated the president. So it is worth looking back a little bit. Here's an article from October 19, 2016, entitled Obama's Plan to Make the Administrative State Permanent by Nathan Marins. And he points out that this is before the election, a month before the 2016 election, President Obama's cronies are being placed into permanent staff positions in the federal government, and the administration is not even bothering to follow its own personnel rules, which govern the process. Apparently, there were people in the Obama administration that realized, there's a chance Trump could win this election, even though we're sure American people have elected Hillary. There's a chance. So there are supposedly around 4,000 people or so that an administration appoints into politically appointed positions. But those people are subject to being fired on a whim of a new president. So, according to this article, the Obama administration started taking people who were political appointees and moving them into career appointments, where we've even seen a case in Arizona, a federal employee commits a federal crime, is found guilty of a federal crime, and a court comes back later and says, that wasn't an adequate basis to fire the federal employee. Boy, once you get into a position like she was in, it's hard to root them out, even when they've committed a federal crime in their job. So that was in the VA. We've changed the law with regard to VA to make it easier to fire felons that commit felonies when they're in their job at the VA. But the Office of Personnel Management director in November of 2009 made a big show of a new policy requiring prior approval for these conversions, taking a political appointee and what's called burrowing them into the federal government, so they'll be part of the deep state, hard to ever get rid of when they're nothing but political hacks. This statement says, I believe we must hold ourselves and the government to a higher standard, one that honors and supports the president's strong commitment to a government that is transparent and open. OPM's responsibility to uphold the merit system is not limited to presidential election years nor to competitive service appointments. That's why I'm instituting a change in OPM policy with respect to hiring political appointees for civil service jobs. And they go on to say, in order to convert somebody from political appointee to career civil service status, you have to get the permission of OPM. But as the article says, apparently some agencies didn't see the need to bother with that permission, and they process conversions without OPM permission. So you see what's happening. Here's another article, this one from November 27th, after President Trump was elected. Congressional Republicans are warning the departing Obama administration against moving any more political appointees into career jobs. But that's what they had done. It said Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee Chairman Ron Johnson, Wisconsin Republican, has asked Acting OPM Director Beth Colbert for weekly reports on all conversions or attempted conversions. But I'd be willing to bet they didn't get what they were asking for, certainly not all of it. This article is from December 8th of 2016. This is from the Daily Signal, Fred Lucas. After President Barack Obama exits office, at least 88 of his political appointees will remain working in the federal government under a Donald Trump administration, according to numbers from the Office of Personnel Management. And it goes on to talk about federal agencies selected 112 political appointees for career civil service jobs, and that's just in December. They had about another 6 weeks to be moving people from political appointee position into civil service so that when President Trump came in, he would have people in key positions that would hate him, be loyal to people like Sally Yates and President Obama, others, Brennan, Clapper, and they could undermine the Trump administration as they've been doing for 3 years now. So Axios, Jonathan Swan comes out with an article this week that it appears to be taking aim at some people who are friends of the president who are trying to help him figure out who it is that is undermining and has no interest in helping President Trump achieve his goals, and in fact has interest in destroying him. 3 years in, you would think a president should be entitled to people working for him that are actually working for him and not against him. But I'm sure there'll be more people trying to classify heroes, trying to help President Trump make America even greater by getting the people out that are trying to stop what he promised to do. So people have come after one of my heroes, Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, Barbara Ladine, and to those who are coming after people that are trying to help President Trump have people that actually like him working for him, not people that can just suck up to him, but people that will actually like him, support his agenda, and want to help. And I think you'll be seeing a lot more of that. It's a shame that they have not been doing articles pointing out some of these duplicitous people who say they're loyal to the Trump administration and they do all they can to undermine it and violate their oath. And I still believe if Durham doesn't end up indicting some people that could go to jail, we won't get the country back. There's no deterrence in what's gone on so far. People that abused the FISA court system, that lied repeatedly to federal judge or judges in the FISA court to get warrants to spy on the Trump administration. And so if there's no consequences, if people who have brought about, made it an instrument of politics to use the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, Department of Defense, State Department, to try to defeat a presidential candidate, and then when he gets elected, try to remove him from office. If there aren't multiple people that go to jail for what they've done, the crimes committed, then there's no deterrence, and they'll be up to it even bigger. But next time, they will have figured out where they made mistakes in getting caught and being unsuccessful, and we will lose the freedom we once had to select our own leaders. But I don't hear any of these authors, I don't read any of these authors actually condemning the DNC, the Clinton campaign, the Department of Defense, the DOJ, in using and getting help from foreigners to try to combat the Trump campaign and then to affect our election. And anybody that would say on this floor that there were no Ukrainians involved in trying to affect our election, they're just ignorant. You know, there's no harm. We're all ignorant of some things, but they're ignorant of the facts. And you can start with the op-ed that the ambassador from Ukraine wrote before the election, trashing President Trump. That is trying to affect our election by Ukrainian, and you know it had to go a lot deeper than that. So I would love to see some of these folks that want to come after President Trump and come after those of us who'd like free and fair elections. I'd like to see them be more fair on both sides of the aisle as far as where crimes have really been committed. If we're going to preserve this little experiment in self-government, there need to be multiple people go to jail for the crimes they've committed. And if that doesn't happen, we're in big trouble. With that, I yield back.